Century Rain by Alastair Reynolds. So this book was copyright 2004, and believe it or not, this is the first Alastair Reynolds book that I've read. I've always been on the hunt for House of Suns. A lot of people say that's a great place to start because it's a standalone and it's one of his better novels. This is a standalone, it's not part of a series. I have yet to find a copy of House of Suns, and I found this locally for 10 cents, believe it or not. And when I did the book haul, people said, yeah, go ahead and start with that. It's a good place to start. It might not be his best. And I did enjoy this one, especially the beginning. The second half I had some issues with, but overall I really enjoyed this. And if this is one of his kind of lesser known works, and it was a little bit earlier in his career, I think we can only go up from here. And I think he's definitely going to be an author that I really will enjoy and hopefully eventually read some of his series. But this book is very fascinating. He blends so many different genres and ideas together. We have some mystery and detective. Part of it reads like a thriller. There's hard science fiction. There's nanotechnology. There's kind of wormholes or alternate Earths. There's a bunch of different things going on. We have a bit of a love story, even some jazz music. It kind of covers the whole gambit. And in the beginning of this one, I think he nailed it. It was just such a unique blend of so many different things and kind of new twists on ideas, especially the way he had some ideas about nanotechnology. I was all in. And then the second half of the book, some of the characterization and the dialogue didn't quite do it for me. And then he finally wraps it up in the end after I kind of felt like it took a while to get there. It had a very good ending in the end, and I definitely like this one. I don't know enough about Reynolds to say whether I would recommend this or not. I mean, I read it as my first novel, and it was good. It wasn't great in my mind. But let's just kind of get into what this is about. So when this book starts off, there's basically two separate plot lines going on, and he uses each chapter to flip from one plot line to the other. And then as you read through the book, these plot lines will converge. You won't alternate between chapters, and you'll be kind of reading one plot after that. But one of the plot lines is with our main character, and her name is Augur, and she's in a future 300 years from now, and Earth has kind of been devastated by what he calls a nanocost. So like a holocaust, but it's caused by nanotechnology. It's stripped the Earth, it's made it unlivable, and most of humanity is living in these kind of floating cities above the Earth. And humanity is split into two main factions. We have the Threshers, who saw what nanotechnology did to the planet and have kind of shunned that technology. They refuse to use nanotechnology, even though there's some health benefits and some other things around it. And they're trying to kind of investigate what's going on, what happened on the planet, and they're trying to eventually terraform it back into a livable planet. Now, the other faction of humanity, they're called the Threshers, and they embrace nanotechnology. It's a really cool concept, some of these things Reynolds came up with. But these people, these Threshers, they almost have these like clouds of nanobots floating around them that, help their own body heal itself or do different things. But these things can also go out and gather information from the environment or people and bring it back to them. It's a very cool concept. Even though it's not discussed a lot, it's not a main focal point of the novel. He gives you enough information to just kind of make you say, wow, it's pretty interesting. Plus what the nanotechnology did to the planet is also very interesting and a little unique in a way. So our main character, Augur, she's like an archaeologist who runs these missions down on Earth trying to find data. They're trying to kind of uncover some of the reasons this happened, because you get little hints in the beginning that there was some sort of war between these two factions, and there's some defectors from both sides that are giving information that they probably shouldn't, and it's happening both ways. So our main character, Augur, she ends up getting into this group where they're taken to one of Mars' moons of Phobos, and they're shown kind of a wormhole that leads to a different version of Earth. And this was kind of discovered or created by this other faction, these Threshers, the group that embraced nanotechnology, but they've kind of been given this information through a defector, and she gets kind of involved in this whole plot of there's some bigger conspiracy going on here. Maybe this war isn't over. Maybe there's more to come. We find out that Mars kind of went through the same thing too, and it's kind of a wasteland. And we have these humans that are really trying to get Earth back up and running. So that's kind of the one plot line. And the other plot line, we have another main character named Floyd, and he lives in this alternate version of Earth in the late 1950s. And this is a version of Earth where World War II didn't quite go the full route that we know of. It kind of fizzled out early. There was no atomic weapons built. There wasn't a lot of research done into nuclear technology. And so while things seem very similar in some ways, parts of this other version of Earth are quite different. And our main character, Floyd, he is a jazz musician, and he's also a private investigator. And he gets contacted by someone who is friends with someone who kind of fell out of a window, and the cops just think that this lady fell out of a window and died. Well, this friend of hers says, no, there's no way this would have happened. She was pushed, and I want you to investigate this. So he goes on this kind of mission, this detective job to uncover the secrets of this lady's mysterious death. And now these two plot lines converge, and what's interesting is that our main character, Augur, who's 300 years in the future, she travels over to this other version of Earth, and no time travel is necessary. I won't go into great details of how that works, because it's kind of the fun of reading this one, but she gets to go over there, they meet up, they end up coming back to her version of the real future, and they go through this whole thing, uncovering this big grand conspiracy. The stakes really get elevated. There's a lot going on in this one. It's a very intricate plot. And at the end, I feel like there's a very satisfying ending if you can hang on and make it to the very end. And then he even kind of opens it up at the end. He could have wrote many different sequels in this. He could have created a series out of this easily, but he chose not to, and I think that was a good move. I kind of like having that open-endedness kind of in my head to kind of speculate on what could have happened, past the end of this novel. So, overall, I enjoyed it, but the second half of this one kind of went off the rails a bit for me. Once our two characters kind of made it back to the real future, 300 years in the future, there was this kind of love story that was kind of tried to put together. There was a lot of really bad dialogue that wasn't in the first half of the book. The plot got really convoluted unnecessarily, I think. It was almost like this book had to be 500 pages or whatever it was, or maybe he didn't know where to go with it and he was just writing things, and then finally got to the finale after a long slog. And this is my opinion. I know some people probably loved the second half of this book, but for me it was really hard to get through. And but once I did, I was ultimately satisfied with the ending. And like I said, I think there's really only, since this is one of his lesser novels, I think there's a lot better from Reynolds out there. I think he probably grew as an author, and I'm really excited to read some more from him. One parallel that I kind of made as I was reading this is it, in a way, this novel, I don't think this probably holds true for all of Reynolds' work, but this novel in particular right here, Century Reign, kind of reminded me of a lot of Asimov's works, because Asimov liked to have mystery and detectives in his science fiction. He liked to blend, different ideas and come up with some really thought-provoking twists on science and some of these ideas. And Reynolds did the same thing in this one, where they both kind of fall short. Asimov is definitely not known for his dialogue or for his deep character studies or anything like that. And I felt like this book, Century Reign, kind of fell short on those same aspects as some of Asimov's most famous works. That being said, I love Isaac Asimov. He's probably one of my favorite science fiction authors. I've come to expect that with him. I think for a book written in 2004, maybe I expected a little bit better dialogue, but it's nothing that's going to hold me back from reading more from him in the future. So that's going to do it for this video. I'm not really sure what I'm going to be reading next, so just keep an eye out on the channel. And once again, thanks for watching.